B. Me Kellen, 29, data analyst at a mid-level tech company. My job is basically to be a professional fortune teller, but instead of a crystal ball, I use spreadsheets the size of a small country. I find patterns, I model outcomes, I tell people what's likely to happen if they push the big red button. I'm good at it. I'm quiet, I keep to myself, I just do the work. My reports are clean, my data is solid, that's all that should matter. For a few years, it was fine. Decent pay, low drama. The office was run by a guy named Frank, an old-school manager who cared about one thing: does it work? If your numbers added up, he left you alone. If they didn't, he'd be at your desk. Simple. Fair. Then Frank retired. We got the email a few months back. A big announcement about new leadership for our department. The email was full of corporate buzzwords. A new era of dynamic leadership, fostering an inclusive and forward-thinking environment. Disrupting the status quo. My colleague Moshe leans over his monitor. He's a good guy, but a worrier. He points at the screen and just says, oh. I knew what he meant. That kind of language isn't about making the product better. It's about changing the culture. And changing the culture never means making things more efficient. The next day she arrived, Christina, our new project director. She calls an all-hands meeting first thing. She walks in, and the entire energy of the room shifts. She's got that high-energy, super confident vibe of someone who has read a lot of management books. She starts with a presentation. It's all slick graphics and inspirational quotes. She talks about her vision, about breaking down old, rigid structures. She keeps using the phrase, unlearning traditional workflows. Says the department has been too stagnant, too reliant on legacy thinking. She looks around the room, making eye contact with all the women on the team, giving them this knowing smile. A few of them smile back, looking excited. The rest of us, the guys who have been keeping the lights on for years, just sit there. I'm not against change, I'm against stupid change. I care about what's effective, not what sounds good in a TED Talk. After the presentation, she walks around the office to connect with the team. She gets to my desk. I'm in the middle of a complex data query. She looks at my dual monitors, both filled with code and numbers. She says, "Wow, that looks intense. We need to make sure we're not getting too bogged down in the granular details. It's about the big picture." I just nod. The details create the big picture. She gives a tight little smile. Right. Well, I'm looking forward to your contributions. She walks away. Moshe looks at me again. He just shakes his head slowly. A few weeks later, the big project kicks off. Project Titan. It's a massive new platform for our biggest client. It's a make-or-break deal. High visibility, high stakes. Christina is in charge of the whole thing. This is her chance to prove her new vision. She lays out the strategy in a kickoff meeting. Her plan is ambitious. It relies on a very aggressive timeline and a new flashy framework that our team has never used before. It promises the world, faster deployment, incredible user experience, all the buzzwords. A couple of the senior engineers raise some concerns. They talk about stability issues, the learning curve. Christina handles their objections with that same smile. She calls their concerns valid but rooted in a fear of the unknown. She says that true innovation requires taking risks. She then says something that makes the whole room go quiet. The old way of doing things, the male-dominated, cautious approach, is what leads to stagnation. We need to embrace a more collaborative, intuitive strategy. She didn't say it outright, but the message was clear. Your concerns aren't technical, they're ideological. You're just resisting a woman's leadership. The engineers shut up after that. Nobody wants that label. My job on the project is risk assessment and performance modeling. I'm supposed to take her grand vision and figure out if it will actually work under pressure. So I get to work. I spend the next couple of weeks building a complete simulation of the new platform. I work late. I drink a lot of coffee. I dive deep into the numbers. I test every component of her proposed architecture. At first, the results look okay. Under light to moderate load, the system holds up. Christina's chosen framework is indeed fast in simple scenarios. But my job isn't to test for simple scenarios. My job is to test for launch day, when we're expecting hundreds of thousands of users to hit the system all at once. I build a model for peak load, a worst-case scenario. I run the simulation. The result is not just bad, it's catastrophic. The model shows the system working fine for about the first 15 minutes of peak load. Then, a critical bottleneck appears in the database communication layer. It's a fundamental flaw in how the new framework handles concurrent requests. The requests start timing out. They pile up. A cascade failure begins. According to the model, the entire system will crash. Not slow down, crash, hard. Total service failure in under 30 minutes of peak traffic. The probability of failure is 98.7%. I check my math. I run the simulation again from scratch. I build a second model using a different method. Same result. Every time. It's a ticking time bomb buried in the core of the project. I feel that cold knot in my stomach. The one you get when you know something bad is coming and you're the only one who sees it. My first thought is to show Moshe. He's a good sounding board. I call him over to my desk. I walk him through the data. His face gets paler and paler as he looks at the charts. He looks at the final projection of the system failure. Wow, that's undeniable, he says, his voice barely a whisper. What should I do? I ask. He looks over his shoulder toward Christina's glass-walled office. Man, I don't know. You saw what she did to the engineers. She doesn't want to hear about problems. She wants cheerleaders. This isn't a problem, Moshe. This is a guaranteed disaster. I know, he says. Just be careful how you present it. Don't make it sound like you're attacking her idea. He was trying to be helpful, but it was cowardly advice. The data is the data. It's not an attack, it's a fact. I schedule a meeting with Christina, just me and her. I figure a one-on-one is better than a public showdown. I prepare a concise 5-page report. No emotion, no blame, just charts, graphs, and the projected outcome. I walk into her office the next day. I start to walk her through the report. Christina, I've completed the performance modeling for Project Titan under peak load. I've identified a critical issue. I show her the first chart, the one illustrating the cascade failure. She doesn't even look at it closely. She holds up her hand to stop me. Kellen, she says, with a tone like she's patiently explaining something to a child. I appreciate you doing your due diligence. I really do. But your models are based on the old way of doing things. It's just math, I say. The framework can't handle the concurrent connections. The data is clear. She leans back in her chair and crosses her arms. Data isn't everything. It's about vision. It's about a holistic approach. You're looking at the system with a lens of masculine anxiety, a focus on what could go wrong instead of what we can make go right. I'm stunned. Masculine anxiety? Is she serious? This isn't about anxiety, I say, trying to keep my voice steady. It's about a predictable system failure that will impact our biggest client and cost the company millions. She sighs, a dramatic, frustrated sigh. You're just not getting it. Your resistance to this new approach is creating a self-fulfilling prophecy in your models. You're so convinced the old way is better that you're subconsciously designing your tests to prove it. Now I'm angry. She's not questioning my data. She's questioning my integrity, my professionalism. That's not how it works, I say. My models are objective. Nothing is truly objective, she replies, sounding like a first-year philosophy student. We all bring our biases to the table, and the bias of traditional tech culture has always been to resist change and magnify risk. I'm trying to build a team that operates on trust and empowerment, not fear. The meeting is over. She's dismissed me and my work completely. She sees my warning as a personal failing, a psychological flaw. I walk back to my desk, my blood boiling. Moshe sees my face and knows immediately how it went. He avoids my eyes. I sit down. I stare at my screen. I have two choices. I can let it go. Let her run the project into the ground. It wouldn't be my fault. I did my job. I gave my warning. Or I can try one more time. I can't let it go. It's not in my nature. If the ship is sailing toward an iceberg, I can't just sit back and watch. But I'm not going to talk to her again. Words don't work. I open my email. I compose a new message. The recipient is Christina. I CC the project's lead engineer. The subject line is clear and professional. Urgent follow-up. Critical risk identified in Project Titan performance model. In the body of the email, I summarize my findings in the most neutral, factual language possible. I state that my simulations, run multiple times with different methodologies, predict a 98.7% chance of total system failure under the expected peak load on launch day. I state my official recommendation: an immediate halt to the current deployment schedule to allow for a redesign of the back-end architecture. I attach the full, detailed report. I read the email over 3 times, then I hit send. The ball is in her court now. It's on the record. It's documented. An hour later, I get a 1-sentence reply from her. "Thank you for your input, Kellen. Your concerns have been noted." She didn't CC the engineer in her reply. She isolated me. Noted. Not addressed. Not, "We'll look into this." Noted. The corporate equivalent of pats you on the head and tells you to run along. The lead engineer never mentions the email to me. He's probably been warned to keep his head down. The project moves forward, full steam ahead. The next few weeks are surreal. The office is buzzing with energy. Christina is the star of the show. She's giving upbeat presentations to upper management about how well everything is going. She talks about synergy and team empowerment. She takes the credit for the team's hard work, framing it as a success of her leadership style. I'm basically a ghost. I'm left out of key meetings. My input is no longer requested. I just keep doing my work, running other analyses, watching the train wreck happen in slow motion. Moshe tries to be nice. He brings me coffee sometimes. "Maybe you were wrong," he says one day, trying to be optimistic. "Maybe it will hold up." "It won't," I say. "The numbers don't lie." "Well," he says, "at least you have the email." He's right. That email is my only life raft. The atmosphere gets more and more cult-like around Christina. She starts holding these weird morning check-in meetings where people are encouraged to share their feelings about the project. It's all about positive affirmations. Anyone who raises a technical problem is subtly framed as being not a team player or having a negative mindset. The project isn't just a project anymore. It's a test of faith in Christina's vision. Dissent is heresy. The client is getting excited. They're seeing the slick front-end demos and they love it. They have no idea that the foundation is made of sand. The launch date is set. The final countdown begins. The week before launch, Christina holds a big go-live celebration party in the office. Pizza, balloons, the works. She gives a speech. She thanks everyone for their hard work and for believing in a new way of working. She makes a toast to Titan and to shattering the old paradigms. Everyone cheers. They're all caught up in the hype. I'm standing in the back, holding a slice of pizza I don't want. She catches my eye from across the room. She gives me that same tight, condescending smile. It says, "See, you were wrong. Your negativity had no power here." I just look back at her, expressionless. I don't need to say anything. The data will speak for me, soon. The night before the launch, I can't sleep. It's a strange feeling. It's not anxiety about being wrong. It's the grim certainty of being right. I feel like a meteorologist watching a hurricane form, knowing exactly where it's going to hit, while everyone else is planning a beach party. There's nothing more I can do. The warnings were issued. They were ignored. All I can do now is wait for the impact. I go to the office early on launch day. The air is electric. People are excited, nervous. It's like the mission control room before a rocket launch. A giant monitor is set up at the front of the room, displaying the system's real-time performance metrics. User count, server load, transaction speed. Christina is at the center of it all, directing things, a confident general on the battlefield. She's wearing a "The Future is Female" t-shirt under her blazer. I wish I were making that up. The switch is flipped. Project Titan is live. For the first few minutes, everything is perfect. The numbers on the big screen are all green. The user count starts to climb, slowly at first, then faster. A cheer goes up in the room. People are patting each other on the back. Christina is beaming. She walks past my desk. "Looks like your models had a little masculine anxiety after all, Kellen." I don't reply. I just stare at the screen. I'm watching one specific metric, a little number in the bottom corner of the dashboard. Database query latency. It's the canary in the coal mine. Right now, it's green, a healthy 50 milliseconds. The user count ticks past 10,000, then 50,000. The number is still green, still stable. A small seed of doubt enters my mind for the first time. What if I was wrong? What if some last-minute miracle patch I didn't know about fixed the flaw? The user count hits 100,000. This is the beginning of the peak load window. The query latency number flickers. It turns from green to yellow. 200 milliseconds. Nobody else notices. They're all watching the big flashy user count number. I see Moshe glance at me. He sees that I'm watching the latency metric. He knows. The user count keeps climbing. 150,000. The number is solid yellow now. 500 milliseconds. The first error alert pops up on the dashboard. A single, blinking red dot. Someone on the engineering team points it out. Hey, we've got some timeouts. Christina waves a hand dismissively. It's fine. The system is just adjusting to the load. Totally normal. The user count hits 200,000. The client is now running a massive marketing push. This is the wave I predicted. The latency number turns red. 1,500 milliseconds. Then 2 red dots appear on the board. Then 5. Then a dozen. The screen starts to look like a Christmas tree from hell. A phone rings. It's the client's emergency support line. One of the engineers answers it. His face goes white. He puts the client on hold. They're saying nothing is loading. The entire platform is frozen. Christina's smile is gone. What do you mean frozen? Just reboot the affected servers. She snaps. We can't, the engineer says, his voice shaking. It's not one server. The entire database is locked up. It's not responding. My model didn't just predict a slowdown. It predicted a crash. And now it was happening. In real time, right in front of everyone who had ignored me. I look at the big screen. The user count number, the one they were all so proud of, has flatlined. Then, the whole dashboard goes red. A single massive error message appears in the middle of the screen. Critical cascade failure. The room is dead silent. You can hear a pin drop. The cheering has stopped. The celebration is over. Project Titan is dead. And my quiet, ignored report is about to become the most important document in the entire company. The words critical cascade failure burned on the main screen in a sea of red. For about 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. It was the kind of silence that follows a loud, unexpected noise. The silence of pure shock. Then, chaos erupted. Phones started ringing off the hook. Not just the support line, but managers' personal cell phones. The engineering team was frantically typing, trying to get any kind of response from the servers. Their faces were grim. They knew this was a death blow. Christina was the first to break the shocked silence. She pointed a shaking finger at the lead engineer. What is this? What did you do? Her voice was shrill. The calm, confident leader was gone. In her place was someone cornered and terrified. The engineer, a guy named Ben, looked up from his keyboard, his expression a mix of exhaustion and anger. It's exactly what the model predicted. The database is in a deadlock state. The requests overwhelmed it, and the recovery protocols are failing. The whole thing is corrupt. Uncorrupt it, she shrieked. You don't understand, another engineer chimed in. There's nothing to uncorrupt. The architecture itself is the failure point. We'd have to take it down and rebuild it from the ground up. Christina stared at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. She wouldn't or couldn't process what she was hearing. Her entire vision, her big career-making project, had just evaporated in front of the entire department. She started looking for a scapegoat. Her eyes scanned the room, desperately seeking someone to blame. This is a QA failure. Why wasn't this caught in testing? Who signed off on the stress tests? A junior QA tester looked like he was about to be sick. He stammered, We ran the tests you specified, the scenarios you approved. Her scenarios, of course, had never included a true peak load simulation. She had called it unrealistic fear-mongering. I just sat at my desk, watching. I felt strangely calm. There was no satisfaction, no "I told you so" feeling. Just a grim, hollow sense of inevitability, like watching a building demolish itself after you've already pointed out the cracks in the foundation. The noise level in the room was rising, shouting, phones ringing, the frantic clicking of keyboards. In the middle of it all, a side door opened. It was the director, the top boss, the one who stood 2 levels above Christina. We never saw him on the main floor unless something was very, very good or very, very bad. He wasn't a loud man. He was in his late 50s, always wore a perfectly tailored suit, and he spoke in a low, even voice that made everyone stop and listen. He walked into the center of the room and just stood there for a moment, observing the chaos. He didn't have to say a word. The entire room fell silent within seconds. He looked at the giant red screen. He looked at the panicked faces of the engineers. Then his eyes settled on Christina. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the tension like a knife. "My office, now, you," he pointed at Christina. "You," he pointed at Ben, the lead engineer. "And you." His finger was pointing directly at me. Kellen, the ghost. My heart hammered in my chest. This was it. Moshe gave me a look that was equal parts terror and encouragement. I stood up and followed them. The walk to the director's office felt like a mile. His office was on the top floor. It was huge, with a giant window overlooking the city. We all sat down at his massive conference table. Christina was visibly trembling, though she was trying to hide it. The director sat at the head of the table. He didn't speak for a long time. He just steepled his fingers and looked at each of us in turn. Finally, he spoke, his voice dangerously calm. "I have just gotten off the phone with the CEO of our largest client. He used several words to describe our company, none of which I am willing to repeat." He paused, letting that sink in. He informed me that this single failure on his company's most important sales day of the year will cost him an estimated $8 million, and that's just today. Christina flinched as if she'd been struck. "So," the director continued, his eyes fixed on her, "tell me what happened, and do not use any corporate buzzwords, just the facts." Christina took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. The confident visionary was back, at least for a moment. This was her last stand. She launched into a carefully crafted narrative of noble failure. She talked about pushing the boundaries of innovation, about the inherent risks of being a market leader. She claimed there must have been a sudden, unpredictable server farm issue, or perhaps even a coordinated denial of service attack. It was a black swan event, she said, an unforeseeable confluence of factors. Then she moved to phase 2 of her defense, blaming the team. While my strategic vision for the project was sound, I may have placed too much faith in the technical team's ability to execute on a forward-thinking architecture. The foundational code must have been more brittle than their testing indicated. Ben, the lead engineer, looked absolutely furious. "That's not true. We followed your approved architecture to the letter. We raised concerns about the framework's stability, and you dismissed them." "I encouraged you to have a more positive mindset," Christina shot back. "Your team seemed resistant to innovation from the start. A negative attitude can often lead to sloppy work." They started arguing back and forth. Christina was skilled at this. She was turning it into a he said, she said situation, creating doubt, muddying the waters. I stayed silent. I knew my turn was coming. The director let them argue for another minute, his face an unreadable mask. Then he held up a hand. Instant silence. He slowly turned his head and looked directly at me. The full weight of his attention was now on me. "Kellen, you're the data analyst. Your job is to model risk. Did you, or did you not, see this coming?" The room was so quiet I could hear the air conditioning. Christina shot me a look of pure hatred, a warning. "Don't you dare!" Ben was looking at me with desperation. "Please, tell the truth." I didn't say a word. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I kept my movements slow and deliberate. I unlocked the screen, opened my email app. I went to my sent folder. There it was, the email I had sent 3 weeks ago. Subject, urgent follow-up, critical risk, identified in Project Titan performance model. I could feel Christina's stare burning into me. Her whole body was tense. She knew what I was doing. I tapped the forward button. In the to field, I typed the director's email address. I didn't add any text to the body of the email. It didn't need any. The original message and the attached report spoke for themselves. I looked up from my phone, met the director's gaze, and hit send. A moment later, a soft chime came from the laptop on the table in front of him. He had a new email. He opened his laptop. He clicked on the message. Christina was holding her breath. The director read the short text of my original email. Then his eyes flicked down to the attachment. He double-clicked it. The full 5-page PDF report opened on his screen, the same one Christina had refused to look at. He scrolled through it slowly. I could see the charts and graphs reflected in his glasses, the projected user load, the rising database latency, the cascade failure timeline. The silence in the room stretched for what felt like a lifetime. He scrolled back to the top of the report, looked at the date, then looked at the bottom, at my name. He closed the report. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't get angry. He just looked at Christina with an expression of profound disappointment. It was far more devastating than rage. "Christina," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "this email is time-stamped 3 weeks ago. It contains a complete, accurate, and detailed prediction of the exact failure that just occurred." He paused. "Why am I seeing it for the first time now, when our company is on fire?" Christina's face crumbled. The mask was gone. There was nowhere left to hide. She started to stammer. I saw it, but it was just one model, a projection, the most negative possible outcome. I didn't want to create panic. I didn't want to undermine the team's morale with so much negativity right before launch." Her voice trailed off. Even she could hear how weak and pathetic it sounded. The director listened patiently until she was finished. He then closed his laptop with a soft, final click. "You didn't want to undermine morale," he repeated, his voice cold as ice. "Instead, you chose to blindside this company, betray the trust of our biggest client, and burn millions of dollars of revenue to the ground, all because you didn't want to hear bad news." He stood up. "This meeting is over. Ben, Kellen, go. Start working with your teams on a rollback plan. Do whatever it takes. I'll handle the client." Ben and I got up and left. As I was walking out the door, I glanced back. The director was looking at Christina. "You and I are going to have a different conversation now, with HR." I closed the door behind me. We walked back to the main office floor. The atmosphere was still tense, but now it was laced with a new feeling, certainty. Everyone knew a verdict had been reached. I sat down at my desk. I didn't feel like a hero. I just felt tired. About 45 minutes later, we all saw it. 2 people from HR, along with a security guard, walked quietly to Christina's glass office. They went inside. They were in there for about 10 minutes. When they came out, Christina was with them. She was carrying a small cardboard box with her personal effects. A coffee mug, a picture frame, a small plant. Her face was blank. She looked straight ahead, not making eye contact with anyone as they escorted her across the office. She walked past my desk. For a split second, her eyes met mine. There was no anger in them anymore, just a vast, empty expanse of defeat. Then she was gone, out the main doors. Forever. The next morning, things were different. The director called another meeting, this time with the entire project team. He announced that Christina was no longer with the company. He announced that Project Titan, in its current form, was officially dead. They were going to rebuild it, using a stable, proven architecture. No more flashy, high-risk experiments on a mission-critical system. He then looked over the crowd, and his eyes found me again. "The rebuild will be guided by a data-first principle," he said. "Every major architectural decision will be vetted and approved based on rigorous performance modeling." He pointed at me. "Kellen will be the lead analyst for that effort. He has my full authority to veto any design choice that does not meet our new, much higher standard of resilience. His team will get any resources they need." It wasn't a reward. It wasn't a celebration. It was a responsibility, a recognition of competence. In that moment, that was worth more than any promotion or bonus. It was respect. The rebuild was long and difficult. We worked hard for the next several months to regain the client's trust. We launched the new stable version of the platform. It wasn't as flashy. It didn't use the trendiest new tech, but it was a rock. On the day of the relaunch, it handled triple the load of the original crash without even breaking a sweat. One evening, after the successful launch, Moshe came by my desk as I was packing up. The office was mostly empty. He just stood there for a second, then said, "You know, I felt bad that day, when you tried to warn her and I just looked away. I was afraid of getting on her bad side." "A lot of people were," I said. "Yeah," he said. "But you weren't. You just stuck to the facts. You played the long game. That was really something to see." We stood in silence for a moment. "Anyway," he said, giving me a small smile. "Just wanted to say that. See you tomorrow." He walked away. I finished packing my bag and shut down my computer. As I walked out of the quiet, empty office, I thought about the whole mess. Christina had a vision. She was a great speaker. She was charismatic and confident. She could sell an idea better than anyone I had ever met. But in the end, her confidence was built on nothing but words. She thought she could bend reality to her will just by believing hard enough and by shaming anyone who dared to question her. She thought competence was an outdated concept, a relic of a patriarchal system, that it could be replaced with ideology and positive thinking. She was wrong. You can ignore data. You can bully your subordinates. You can spin narratives and blame others. But you can't argue with system architecture. You can't debate with math. Reality doesn't care about your feelings. The numbers don't have a bias. The server doesn't care about your vision. It either works or it doesn't. Hers didn't. Mine did. End of story.